Hey, I'm Aubriana, and this is a conversation series with builders, leaders, and people shaping and studying the work of change across media, technology, and AI. We talk about what's really happening beyond the headlines, what's real, what's messy, and how people are thinking about transformation that actually makes a difference. Welcome to Agents of Change, Human in the Loop. Hey everyone, welcome back to Agents of Change, Human in the Loop. Today I'm joined by Priti, a friend and founder of Advertible. Priti has spent her career really at the intersection of marketing, technology, and data. She's worked with global brands, helped organizations navigate through rapidly evolving digital landscape. And now with Advertible, she's focused on helping companies move beyond fixed ad formats and rigid workflows by enabling creative that adapts dynamically at the moment of delivery. Preeti, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you.
Awesome. And happy Women's History Month.
Same to you. Same
You
to
are a
you.
woman making history, and I am so excited to have you here. So, for people who don't really know your background, could you just share a little bit about your path into marketing and advertising and then ultimately what led you to build Advertible?
Yeah, sure. Most of us didn't have an option to work in programmatic when we were in college. So I would have to say that it's been a winding road to get here. And a lot of it is about following the breadcrumbs and just following your instincts. So, I actually did start in media. I did TV ad sales at MTV, after a short stint in accounting and petty cash, which is another story. But yeah, I think that like throughout my entire history, I have been intrigued by consumers and what causes them to make a purchase and what really is involved in actually getting to the heart of why people make the decisions they do, specifically around purchasing things. And so that hits really around media, marketing, advertising, and I followed that sort of through line from TV ad sales into the brand side, out into ad tech, where, at some point I really realized what was missing for me as I was making decisions on the brand side was data.
Mm.
This was the early 2000s, and I was making huge investment decisions and realized I don't even know anything about these customers. And I am being tasked with making these huge investment decisions. And so I ended up in an ad tech startup where I had plenty of data at my fingertips. And that kind of took my trajectory straight into digital. Ended up in an ad network. And then when we started selling programmatically, some light bulb went off in my head. And I said, this is actually changing the way that we think about things. I want to be part of that future. And so I found my way into programmatic on the buy side, follow the trail into data, and then ended up really at a company where there was both buy and sell side platforms available. And what we needed at that point was differentiation. And so in differentiation, we went back to creative and to the heart of really what mattered in advertising. And, what started to come out was the lack of innovative tools for creative, really. And, after getting laid off, as most people do, we started a company. And so Advertible came out of this need for, or more of the thought that a lot of SSPs at that point didn't have creative rendering technology. It had typically sat in the hands of the buy side. And therefore, the sell side was really lacking in the ability to help their publishers in terms of having better ads rendering on their pages and also in enabling brands to really show up in the best way possible on those publishers. So Advertible was formed really out of the idea that there was a gap in market around creative technology. And what we built is a creative infrastructure. And as you really well put it, it is about adaptive technology so that brands and advertisers can show up in any environment to match the look and feel of where they are, and they're not restricted by sizes or formats or any of the constraints that we have today in advertising.
I love that. It sounds like that winding path has really directed your trajectory to where you have like this all-encompassing view for this problem that you're solving now. So that's exciting. I think right now there's like so much industry talk about AI, right? I mean, it's nauseating at this point, but a lot of it is like, okay, it's transforming marketing, it's transforming media, but there's so much that still feels like really surface level. So I'm curious from your perspective, what parts of models within, marketing and advertising are actually most vulnerable to AI over the next few years? Like what do you think might break first?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're a little ahead in terms of being at the forefront of AI, but we too have gotten heavily involved. We're part of the agenticadvertising.org, and sit on the cabinet there. And I think what we're seeing and hearing, there is a lot of chatter. There's a lot of discussion around what is AI, what's it doing, which protocol do you use, how do you implement it? And I think before we get to the heart of all of those things, I think what's happening right now is there's an AI duplication of effort. So there's a repurposing of existing functionality, but now done by AI. And
Hmm.
I think the real beauty is going to come when we have more sophisticated orchestration. So I think at this point, what is being replaced are more of the operational tactical layers. Get your agent to do this for you, get your agent to do that for you. I think it'll be really telling when we can get to a point of now, how does this work together in a really fluid and elevated workflow where you're actually building something net new. And I think right now we're still kind of finding our way through that, and it's building on top of what already exists. And I think once we get past the phase of redundancy and get past that stage of like, okay, those operational inefficiencies have been replaced by agents. And to your point, I think that's what's going to go first. It's less about the tactics
Hmm.
and it's about elevating the opportunity for the teams and the people that are focused on that to do more meaningful work. And I think it's taking away the grunt work. I think we've all heard this and we've talked about it, but it's about elevating everyone strategically into roles where they can actually add value in a meaningful way. But think of AI to redefine what we're doing and come up with new solutions that we haven't even thought about. And I think that's the challenging part is getting everyone to think bigger and
Hmm.
then head in the same direction together.
Well, obviously I'm betting on it for sure. It does feel very much like we have implemented AI as like an errand boy, right? So like go do this for me, go do that for me, but it hasn't taken over from an operating system layer whatsoever. And for as long as we've been in this industry, fundamentally things have been broken and we've just like put the patches in place to figure out how to get from A to Z.
Yeah.
But it's like we're reworking the whole entire infrastructure. Right now it feels like there's, like you said, there's additional tools being built on top of legacy infrastructure, but not necessarily replacing what's been broken from a foundational standpoint first. So, I'm thinking of, we're both building companies, right? You are building this in the middle of a technology shift like AI. You're essentially making a bet about the future. You
Mhm.
know, Considering what you just stated in terms of how you see AI today and what's kind of still broken and what the potential and the excitement is for the future,
Yeah.
what's the bet that you're making, like where the industry is going? How does that apply to Advertible specifically?
Yeah, I think the really exciting part here is it's twofold. Number one, it's in the thought and the theory that companies of any size can create value right now. So
Mhm.
I think number one, companies big and small are being given an opportunity to stand up and showcase what they can do as long as they can add value to what we're building. So I think the first way in which it applies is it kind of clears the slate. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business. It doesn't matter how much of a history you have if you have trust, whether that's within your team and trust with your relationships, as well as technology that is solid and that works, you have an opportunity to play and make a change in this field. The second way that I think about this is that agentic really reframes our advertising challenge and brings intent and execution a lot closer together. So I think with programmatic, we really addressed an efficiency problem. And so we created a lot of tools around operationalizing the bid stream and really optimizing how we're bidding and what the targeting looks like and getting to the right person. And the part that was really kind of left out was the creative. And in my mind, that's always been the core of what advertising is. And I'm sure you agree. However, if you think about the workflows, an advertiser builds a creative in programmatic, and then they decide who to target, where to target, and what the campaign intents are. So I think with agentic, the real opportunity here is cutting out that middle layer and saying, here's my intent, here's my campaign direction, here's what I want to do, here's the outcome I would like to seek. And then building at that very moment the creative that is delivered in real time to match the intent and the environment together in one foul swoop.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity certainly to change the order of things, right? Like how do you get that? How do you achieve the outcome? Let's start with the outcome. And I don't
Yeah.
know that we've ever been there, but it seems like that is definitely on the horizon for what's next. I agree with that. I mean, you're watching a lot of startups. You're working with a lot of different types of clients. Like I would ask the question of both founders and the companies that you're working with. What do you feel like they're getting wrong right now? Like the real challenge, is it the technology itself, the ability for organizations maybe to adopt and adapt, like or operationalize it? What do you feel like is kind of missing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of those things. I think that there are a ton of genius founders out there. There's no lack of ideas and there's no lack of intelligence around what's being built. I think the problem is that everyone is coming to the table with like, look, I have this cool solution. And what needs to happen is more of, and here's what the value is, and here's how we can actually implement it in a way that doesn't cause friction. Because what's happening right now is you're trying to force adoption, you're trying to force a very large change on organizations that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years at this point. And that's in the short programmatic lifespan, right? Like forget about the brands that have been around for much longer. But really the challenge here is not just creating technology that works. It is in then ensuring that you have the trust of your customers. It's ensuring that your technology has the strength that it needs to evolve with the times. And I think we are at, the start of the race, and by the end of it, it's going to look dramatically different. And what needs to be involved is adaptation throughout. And I think that ability to evolve quickly and agilely is actually what's been missing. It can't just be sitting in an incubator on the side of a large company. It needs to kind of permeate the thought process of the entire organization. And unless AI is a topic of central focus for an entire company, it's going to be built in a silo and is going to need to continuously be rebuilt. And there's going to be friction within these large organizations. So I would say the biggest challenge is around adoption, but it needs to be addressed with a mindset of adaptability.
A quick thank you to CPS Comtech for supporting this episode. As we talk about AI and what's next in media and technology, it's really easy to focus on the tools. But behind every system, every deployment, and every transformation, there are people building it. CPS Comtech has been helping growing companies scale their teams since 1986, providing contract to hire, direct hire, and project-based talent across technology, engineering, and technical operations. If you're expanding your team or navigating growth this year, You can learn more at cpscomtech.com and let them know you heard about them on Agents of Change. Now back to our episode. Yeah. I keep hearing you go back to the concept of trust, and I love that because one, in an age where we're talking about in essence machines and technology replacing a lot of human workers,
Yeah.
that trust aspect is so important, not only as we adopt that technology, but also as we plug it into our organizations and across teams. And then how do we communicate that value add to our clients, right, who we're working with? So I love that the humans are still in the loop because trust is certainly a human characteristic, right? And
And
you know, go ahead.
it's a human industry,
Yes, it is a
right?
human industry, and we are trying to connect with sentiments and emotions and people's feelings, right? That's what advertising at its heart really is about. And you know, this podcast is called Agents of Change, and so I want to ask you, Preeti, when you hear that phrase, agents of change, like what does being an agent of change mean to you in practice right now, and how do you personally think about that, perhaps in your leadership and the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think for me, it goes beyond just building technology and building a company. And it goes into the opportunity we have as an industry. You and I both know that we're at a very pivotal moment where changes are occurring around us with the types of organizations we work with, the structure of leadership, the way that the opportunities that are arising for women in leadership and for people of color. And I think that more than anything, it's about enabling those voices that haven't had the chance before. So for me, being an agent of change is helping to create the space and clear the path so that those founders that come after you and I are not struggling with the same challenges that we've seen. And I think we've made a ton of headway. I'm not saying that we're sitting in a, in a bleak moment or anything like that. I see a lot of hope and a lot of opportunity around us. And so for me, it's really, I started a South Asian group called They See Us. It is really about just giving South Asian folks within ad tech the opportunity to connect with each other and create opportunities for each other and bring them into the conversation where they haven't had the opportunity before. And same with women, like there are plenty of women that are now in spaces where they are perhaps the only female at the table, or they are having to bring their points of view to a table that might not fully understand them. But I'm here to, say that if you don't involve those voices, your ideas will fall flat. They're not going to register with your consumers. They're not going to register with your teams. They're not going to register with the people that matter. And you need to have the voices that represent those people at the table and making those decisions.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's we kicked off saying, "Oh, hey, it's Women's History Month," and as a mom of two daughters, I am so excited about the world, you know, for them and also scared at the same time, right? It's a interesting mix these days, but I love, like, you know, right now they're learning about women's voting rights and how that came to happen, and it's great to have a moment of like gratitude and think, look what all the steps and all the sacrifices that were made to get you and I here, and then to be a pivotal part of like paying it forward, being involved in how do we promote our cultures, our experience as women, and pave the way for people who are coming behind us, right? Like it's an honor and it's a responsibility. So I love that answer. On the last podcast, I had Rex Briggs, who is Chief AI Officer at Claritas, and he left a question for you, and I'll allow you to do the same thing in a moment. But his question was, you know, you can answer this as a CEO of Advertible, or you can answer it kind of more broad stroke across the industry. But his question was, if your technology or if the technology is so powerful and promising, why has it not been widely adopted yet? And perhaps why do you think the adoption of AI is still lagging behind its capabilities?
I think going back to trust, I think there's a challenge in a couple of different places. Adopting a new workflow is not something that happens overnight. How long did it take for us to get from the adoption of, you know, no programmatic to the adoption of OpenRTB? And then, pre-bid was incrementally faster. And the next technology will be even faster. However, there's a lot of disparity right now in how it needs to be implemented. And there's a lot of noise and confusion, I think, around the understanding of it. And, I think both you and I have had deep roots in product marketing at some point.
Mhm.
And you can attest to the fact that education is probably going to be one of the most important things that we can bring to the industry right now, especially as the world is changing around us, to get everyone on the same singing from the same hymn book. We need to be able to talk the same language, understand the value in the same way, and not compete with each other. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to, what does it mean? How do we define it? How do we talk about it? I think there's still a lot of confusion. I get asked by my family, like, "Oh, what do you think AI is going to do to your company?" And
Mhm.
it's an interesting conversation because it's coming from people that might not understand that there are layers of AI and there are different ways to implement it and there are different tools and there's different understanding. But at the very core, it's still going to be about the skills and the value that your technology brings to the table. It's not going to replace, you can't just have an agent replace everything. And so I think it's number one, it's about education, and that is going to build the trust, right? So the trust is going to be built around all of us understanding and talking about it the same way. Secondly, I think it's going to be about organizational readiness.
Mm.
As we talked about before, the companies we have that we work in today were built to solve a different problem with a different set of people. Now we're saying to those same companies, you need to be a champion of this thing that's going to fully disrupt your entire organization. Of course, there's fear, and so I think that fear around, how do I, as a leader, enable my teams to feel confident in the future and not have this fear, is it's a very careful walk that they have to walk, and so I really believe that, like, getting organizations ready to take on this change is going to be incredibly important. And then lastly, it's just the fact that, and we can think about this, it goes back to programmatic too, the incentive structures are still misaligned. And so how do you now create a new incentive structure? Each turn of technology within our industry has offered a new way to work together, and a new compensation model, and I think right now we're also trying to figure out, how do you now incentivize people in the correct way to want to work together and to also make money and to create value for their organizations while also moving things forward. So I think there's just a lot of complexity right now. And
Yeah.
I think as those pieces clear up, we'll have a lot more opportunity to move forward, and adoption will happen very, very quickly. But I think we're getting through that messy middle right now.
I agree, and I think we're lucky to have people like you to help us peel back the layers of that onion and get through
And
that
you,
complexity. We're trying,
this
right?
podcast, this podcast is amazing, just shining a light on the questions that people have and
Yeah.
addressing them honestly, I think is really one clear path to take.
Yep. Well, we all have to play a part, right? So, I wanted to ask you to close us out, right? Every guest leaves a question for the next guest, someone you may or may not know. So, what question would you like to leave for the next person that's perhaps also shaping the future of media, marketing, or AI?
I am going to think about this for a second. Um, okay, from a founder's perspective, you and I both have been knee deep in the founder journey for the last few years. And I think we can both recognize that it is an experience. Oops. It is a experience that is as much about self-discovery as it is about market discovery. and understanding if your product has fit in the market and if you have clients and if you've solved a problem. I think part of it too is you kind of pressure test yourself. And there are moments that are key moments in your journey, whether that's a decision you make or something you decide not to do or a stand that you take in one direction or another. And often what I've found is that we surprise ourselves in how we come out of that and what we actually do.
Mm.
So my question for the next person is, when you were in the midst of building something or shaping something, what was a moment that forced you to face yourself, and how did you surprise yourself in that outcome, in that pivotal moment? Because really it's about learning about yourself as much as it is about learning and making money and growing the company and all of the things that, your KPIs are. But I think it's is more important to know, what did I gain as a leader and how am I going to contribute to the next generation of leadership?
Yep, I think that's beautiful. I can't wait to ask that question next time.
Clean it up a
Um,
little bit, but you know what I mean.
I think that's a very like reflective, and I'm thinking about that myself, and I'm feeling that. Preeti, this was such a great conversation. Where can people follow your work or learn more about Advertible?
Yeah, so our website is advertibleinc.com. We are on LinkedIn. Find me at the local conference near you. Yeah, I think, if you're South Asian, ping us, join They See Us, and if you're a female in leadership in this industry, I would love to meet you whenever we get a chance to.
Wonderful. Well, this has been Agents of Change, Human in the Loop, and conversations with builders, leaders, and thinkers that are shaping what transformation really looks like across media, technology, and AI. If this episode sparked something for you, please share it, subscribe, and you can stay with us as we continue exploring what it means to build and to lead in moments of real change. Preeti, thanks again for being here.